So in our last video we were kind of discussing about how to create the syntax for CSS projects. So what is a CSS selector, what are declarations, what are properties, and what are their values, right? Now we are going to go a bit more complex. We are going to discuss about combinator selectors, so how to combine two different selectors, and in particular within combinator selectors I'm going to discuss about I'm going to discuss about descendant and child selectors. Right, so what is a descendant selector and what is a child selector, right? So seem like very difficult words, but let's be simple here. So let's say in our HTML file I create a div tag, right, and I will give it a class for now sample, right? And within this sample I am going to create one h1 tag, my sample div, right? And within this div tag I'll also create a OL, ordered list, and I will create list items here. First list item, list, second list item, right? So we have created two list items, one heading within this div, right? Now in my CSS I am going to give a comment just to explain what is descendant, right? So if you look at this structure, right, in HTML, within this div there is a list item, right, and a h1 tag and an OL tag. So the h1 tag is a direct child of this div. The OL tag is also a direct child of this div. The li tag is more like a grandchild of this div. Li tag is more like a direct child of this OL, right? So if I say something like div li and I create a declaration, and within this I say background color red. So what happens is that this says that any list items, if they're present anywhere within a div, they will be considered as a descendant, right? So if I go to my page and I reload, you'll see that both these list items are given a background color of red, right? Now let's do a little bit more complication. Let's say child, right? And we are gonna say same thing, div, but this time we'll use a greater than symbol, and we are gonna say background color blue. Do you think it will change it to blue? If I reload, it doesn't do anything. That is because when you are putting this symbol, you are looking for list items that are directly the children of a div, right? But we know that this list item is a direct child of OL but not a direct child of div. That is why this won't work, right? Suppose I give this one a class of blue, right? And I say div greater than dot blue, and then I declare background color blue, right? If I reload, something is not saved, sorry. I'll save this HTML and then I reload. Okay. Sorry. I just realized that this has to be a direct child. Sorry. So OL, and I say OL greater than dot blue. So it is looking for a dot blue class element that is directly a child of OL. So the only list item here that has a class of blue is this, and it is a direct child of OL. So if I go here and I reload, so this will be blue. Now what if I give this li a class of green and I save it, and I go back to my descendant classes and I say look for dot sample divs that have a dot green descendant. They could be a child, they could be a grandchild, right? And I create a curly bracket declaration, and I say background color green, right? So if I go back, so this will turn as green. So what I'm trying to say here is you have to be very careful about these declarations, because descendant descendant can take any kind of child tags. They could be direct children, they could be grandchildren, but child declarations only take the ones that are directly underneath. So for instance, if I say div greater than h1, right? h1 is a direct child of this div, right? So if I declare something here, let's say background color brown, and I refresh this, this will get a brown background color, right? The reason being h1 is a direct child of this div. So any h1s, let's say I create a new div here, class equals sample, and I create another h1 and I can give it any class, sample class, and I say sample heading 2, right? This will still get a brown color, right? And you can use it in many different ways. For example, we know that this sample, my sample div that is here, has a class sample, right? But what if I say id equals sample 2 and I save it, and now under my descendant, or a child in fact, I say look for sample 2 IDs that have a h1 tag, right? h1 tag as their direct children, and they should have a background color of aqua, right? So now this will be turned as aqua, right? You can use this as dot sample class as well, and this won't change a thing, right? This still stays as aqua, right? But again, the moment you add a div wrapper to this, let's say I create another h1 inside this and I say sample heading 3, do you think it will apply? It won't. It is taking brown. The reason is any h1 that is a child of a div, direct child of a div, needs a brown color, right? If it is like the aqua will apply only to the ones which have a class of sample class. So if I say class equals sample class, so this is not turning brown, or is not turning aqua. The reason being it needs to be a direct child of sample 2, right? So now if I say, if I go back to my descendant and I say you need to check for IDs that have sample 2 and have any kind of child, let's say h1, and background color should be let's say this. I don't know what this color is, but I'll try. So this changes the color. So the difference is simple. Descendant is looking for any children. It could be direct grandchilds or direct childs, or it could be grandchildren, or it could be grandchildren of their grandchildren. Doesn't matter. But the child one looks for very specific direct children. So if it is a direct child, it will only apply there, right? So yeah, that's the uh, you know classification between a descendant and a child combinator rule. So these are combinator rules, how you combine different kinds of IDs or classes to make them work. The difference, again, just to reiterate, descendant can work with any kind of children, but child ones, which use a greater than symbol, they only work if they are direct children. So see you in the next video. We are going to discuss about 2 more combinator selectors, and uh, we will be using them in our next projects, obviously. So see you there.